I think
literally.
I'm sorry.
2 years later.
Yeah, you guys don't have that much slack in your budget.
We're gonna go to Round County, that's what we're saying.
Good luck with that. You know, I had this weird thought the other day, like thinking about sewage treatment plants. And I'm like, it's kind of crappy that like both Steamboat and Hinkley have their water treatment plants upstream of Craig's water intake. I know it's safe, but
But you're not sure that it's safe. You know it is, but you're not sure.
I just don't like the notion of it, I guess. I don't know why.
It causes grumpiness in the lower valley.
Yeah. All right, so this might be it. Hopefully Jason shows up. He might log on time, but
Is he in person or calling in?
I've heard he's doing it in person, but I'm pretty sure he's coming.
You're pretty sure he come,
Yeah.
okay,
We can kind of keep moving him down until we see him.
I agree, and let me go to the front desk to watch for it.
All right, since we got a lot to do, let's call the meeting to order at 4:01. I guess this is following a new format, or I guess one we should have been following before, where we go around and introduce ourselves first. Can we start with Steve over there?
Okay, Steve Hinkmeyer. Hold on a second. Sorry. I just signed in and it started reverbing on. I represent Moffett County municipalities.
Rebecca Greenmore with the Colorado River District.
I'm Frank Alfone with Warner Water Steamboat. I'm their domestic water provider rep.
I'm Jacob Olson, I'm with the Division of Water Resources.
Will Myers, the agricultural rep on the roundtable.
Bill Badaraka, at-large roundtable member.
And I'm Jeff Comstock. I work for Moffett County, but my appointment on the roundtable is at large.
Jonathan Ballard, Employee Green Roundtable and IBCC representative.
Sally Caribou, I'm the FO liaison. Roundtable. Kristen Spronsky, I'm the roundtable member.
And Ken, do you want to introduce yourself real quick?
Ken Brunner, part of County Representative.
Is anybody online we need to introduce?
I'm Mario Sullivan, Rangeley rep for Basin Roundtable.
Thank you. So moving right along to the agenda. We have a new format for the agenda, looks like. I'm gonna take hopefully a little bit more, maybe 7 minutes, because there have been some developments in the post 2026 operating guidelines. As some of you guys know, gonna try to keep it brief as we have a lot of other presentations to go today. So does everybody have any other changes to this agenda? Okay, hearing none.
Move to approve as presented.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Now, do we have the November, this is kind of in flux, the November 12th minutes to review, or?
Yes, they've been in the folder. Kristen put them in there. Monday or Friday, but they've been there a couple of days.
Friday. I do want to say thanks for formalizing this a little bit more. Does anybody have any comments to those?
That's Jonathan.
Did
You work on the agenda a little bit?
Steve did all the work.
Oh, Steve did it again, thanks.
I just came in and did the spit polish at the end.
Then take credit.
Does anybody have any amendments to the minutes from November 12th.
They look good to me. Will I make motion to accept them as written?
Okay,
Brenner, second.
second. Any, all those in favor of accepting the November 12th, 2026 minutes?
Aye.
Aye. All right, any public comment this time that's not on the agenda? Anybody want to? I'm gonna bring desires to speak. None, we will move along to opening this up. I just wanted to, I was originally thinking of having a very brief summary of what we're gonna talk about, but you can see from the agenda what we're gonna talk about tonight. We've got Rebecca and Jonathan kind of talking about the hydrology and the Colorado water users annual meeting, takeaways from that. We got the state engineer Jason Holman talking about compact curtailment rulemaking, and then we have Jonathan and Ken talking about some IDCC updates. With that being said, Rebecca, I'm sure you can talk about it, but from what I can see, we're at 75% of normal snow water equivalent in this basin, which is better than some basins in the state, but it's not real good. It's not the lowest on record, but it's very, very close. If you look at that little data curve that you can get from the USGS. That said, January 9th, the feds released their draft EIS for the post 2026 operations of Powell Mead. Sally, do you mind pulling up my notes real quick on that? So the new, so the feds, proposed, operations of Powell Mead are gonna be the default if the upper and lower basins can't get into agreement, which looks very unlikely still. And their draft FEIS consists of five alternatives. The first is no action, continued 2007 operation, basic coordination alternative. That kind of builds on the no action by modifying some shortage guidelines. Enhance coordination alternative, deepens some potential cuts and expands conservation measures. And there's some additional upstream protections. The maximum operation flexibility alternative is shortens shortage curves and release conditions for Powell and Mead. Optimizes overall system performance with varying hydraulic. Then we get to the supply driven alternative. And the operations are tied directly to supply conditions. With volume based limits on conserved water storage.
Can we get them to blow up the screen so we can read it?
Sally, load it up, please.
Much better. We thought they do another round of introductions since we've doubled our crowd.
Yeah, good. While Sally's blowing that up, that's probably a good thought to break from. So we have. So anybody who's just joined us, maybe you can introduce yourself real quick and tell us what your role is. Let's start over here. Mindy or Brian? Oh, Willie.
My name is Willie Summers. I'm Assistant Division Engineer for Division 6 for Colorado Division of Water Resources.
Mindy Figueroa, I work for the community at Atlanta.
Jason Allman, State Engineer with the Division of Water Resources.
Thanks for being here, Jason. Appreciate it. Well, Chair. You're next.
Ryan Roman, UWR. Reese Melton, Kinsley, Darnell, Steve, Crowd Kings.
Matt Smith, Watershed Coordinator for Headwaters of Colorado Initiative.
Okay, thanks for the suggestion on that, Jeff. That was helpful. So now if that's blowing up a little bit, I'm gonna be real honest. the only information I've dug into has just been some snippets of news articles. Kind of hoping that smarter people than I will dig into these alternatives a little bit more and report to us. But my initial take from reading through some of these, I guess, summaries of these, is that the lower basin will continue to deplete, the storage without regard to supply, meaning, last year, for example, there was, 5.4 million acre feet that entered Powell, but they withdrew 7 to 8.3 million acre feet per year. So it's just like having a reckless kid draw down your checking account and your savings account and still not having regard for the income stream. So what I think all that being said is now's a pretty critical time because we're in the comment period for this draft FEIS. It starts in a couple days, January 16th, and runs through March 2nd. So I think we really need to have some discussions about what that looks like, what our response is going to be as a roundtable, what Colorado's response to be, CWCB, and whatnot. But that's about all I have for an overview, just to say that we did have some developments with this. I'm sure some of you probably looked into it a little bit more, but with that, let's please move along to Rebecca, that's going to give us the really bad, dreary, bleak news about
Actually,
how come I don't have any snow in my yard and my cows are almost eating grass left over from the summer.
Yeah, I feel like every time it's my turn to speak about hydrology, it's like the doom and gloom corner, so I'm sorry for always being the bearer of bad news. But not really any better than last time. This is of course the time of year when we're really looking at snowpack values. There's still, of course, a lot of the winter to go, but as we all know, so far it's been pretty dismal. What's really interesting about this year is that it's been so hot. I don't know about you guys, but I woke up to Christmas Day in Rifle with like 60 degrees and rain, which does not put you in the Christmas mood. But really what that's meant is that instead of getting snow, we're getting rain. And if you look at our precipitation amount, it's not that far off from average, but our snow is way low. So this is kind of the overall for the basin. Precipitation in the whole basin is about 94% of average. So, okay, that's not too bad, but our SWE is only 78%. And just to add on to this too, I wanted to say that those temperature differences are really extreme. We're looking at like 6 to 10 degrees above normal temperature since October for the 3 counties in the Bowie Green area, with Moffett being like on this extreme end of 10 degrees above normal. So really extreme temperatures. You can scroll, Sally, to the next one. Then just to break it down a little, keep going. I think my plot showed up a little bit separately, which is okay.
This one?
Yeah,
Okay.
but can you go up to the numbers? Sorry.
Oh, little
Yeah.
snake, okay.
Little Snake is the best of the 3 basins. If we're looking at Yampa White, Little Snake, they're at about 101% precipitation and 83% of median. And then if you scroll down a little bit more to the next basin, there's the snowpack plot. These are all online too, I believe. Yampa's in the middle of the pack with 91% precipitation and 82% of median. And you can keep scrolling. Oh, that's unfortunate that it didn't show up, but of course, Hawaii is usually our problem child with not getting the precipitation. It's usually the one falling behind the most, and they're only at 84% precipitation, but really low snow water equivalent with 55%. So pretty big difference there. And as Will said, if you scroll just a little bit more, Sally, to those numbers, for the whole state of Colorado, it is worse than the Yampa White Green, so we can at least feel a little bit better that it's not as bad as the whole state of Colorado. They're only at 63% median for SWE. 9% And then we're looking at the full call for Colorado, it's about in line, the same as the Illinois Green Commission. So the numbers that really take away is that looking at precipitation, we're getting it, but since it's not falling in snow, that probably feels at times said burn off, and just real hot temperatures that show up.
There, we may be overreacting a little in that soil moisture plays a huge role in the amount of runoff, and even with really good seen years in the past, that terrible soil moisture, but a good snowpack, and we had very poor production as far as water into Powell. We're kind of the opposite this year. We may not have as great a snowpack, but the soil, we've had a lot of rain and a lot of wet. So our soil moisture is in considerably better shape, so we may have better runoff. It'll be an interesting spring.
Yeah, and I think, there's still a lot of unknown, there's still a lot of the winter season to go, and you're totally right, I mean, who knows what's gonna happen, right? I think it depends on summer temperatures, if we're like really, really hot already in June, that soil moisture might be gone, and by July 1st, we might be really suffering, so I think we're kind of, as normal in this time of year, really in the unknown, waiting to see what happens. And if you wanna continue scrolling a little bit down. Well, it's weird that my pages aren't shown. Do you want me to try to share it? Yeah, absolutely. If you have it. Not me. And stop shooting. Anybody else have comments on that? Why do that?
I think someone said it before maybe the last Big River Committee meeting, but sometimes it might be a blessing in disguise that we're having these problems now with the post 2026. Guidelines coming up, because it really highlights the issues that we're having up basin and kind of brings it to the forefront that, hey, we can't conserve anymore because the hydrology is not there. So it might be kind of timely. That might be kind of a glass bowl looking at it, but who knows?
Yeah, it does help show our story. More like legitimately, who knows what'll happen, but maybe there won't be the water. Okay, sorry. Jump through these here. This is a little bit difficult to read because it's tiny, so I apologize, but essentially you're looking at some of these reservoir storage amounts. Lake Powell is 28% full at this point, and Blue Mesa is about 50% full. Navajo's 60%. And the highest of kind of the crisp reservoirs there is Flaming Gorge with 82% full, and of course a pretty big bucket there. But I think another takeaway from this is that the forecast for the inflow for those reservoirs has really plummeted. So you can see those red numbers in that column. That's the decrease in 1,000 acre feet. That has been the change in forecast for the water year. So if we're looking at Lake Powell, for example, the forecast changed with, there was a change of 1 million acre feet to the forecast. So they're now expecting 1 million acre feet less for the water year. It looks like Powell, which of course is not great. And yeah, 100,000 less for Flaming Gorge. So,
That's December 1st, right?
yeah, and that's what as of December 1st.
January 1st, it's dropped by another significant. I think the forecast was April to July into Lake Powell's down 3.6.
3
million
million
acre feet.
Yeah.
And Blue Mesa was 400, I think. I looked at it, I was preparing a presentation for the 4-state irrigation meeting. That happens tomorrow, but yeah, it's not good.
Yeah.
Now, as we said, it is January, so I mean, the forecast for it just shifted to an El Nino pattern at some point next year, but I don't know if it's gonna happen early enough for us to see a change in the pattern here, but you can always rank for fingers crossed whatever. 2 weeks, but rates are worse than that.
Is that a good thing for the negotiations?
I don't know that I would characterize it as a good thing for the negotiations. I mean, I guess it highlights the fact that this isn't something that we can put off any further. It certainly hasn't produced more rational statements from certain entities like Arizona, whose governor, in her State of the State address 2 days ago, talked about how Colorado is leading the upper basin in not sending the water that they're entitled to their direction. It's an interesting comment to make, but thankfully, I guess she's not the negotiator for Arizona.
Thank God.
So, and she's running for reelection, so I don't, who knows. But I don't think it's good or bad. I think right now, I mean, my understanding from my involvement, with working with Becky Mitchell and the folks that are attending these meetings, they're in a 4-day meeting in Salt Lake right now. Is that, there's still significant effort being put into coming to some solution, whether it's 5 years, 20 years. And the states are committed to continuing to try to come to that solution before the February 14th deadline. I don't have a crystal ball and can't tell you whether that's going to occur or not. So, I didn't think I answered your question very well, but.
No, I mean, we don't know, but it seems that if we're going to a supply criteria, available supply, that a lack of supply might help people understand that there just really isn't any extra water to send down. We drain the reservoir, so
Yeah,
I don't know where is this water supposed to come from? We're gonna drain everything.
I mean,
That's one of their proposals.
the 24-month. I think that there is some openness in the more openness in the lower basin to having very low reservoirs than we think is appropriate. The 24-month forecast using that from January, that forecast shows, Lake Powell dropping to well below 35-25 by the end of the year. Which is why, you have this in the presentation, so. So.
You're much better at presenting on it.
No, I don't think so,
But doesn't the lack of power generation have a pretty direct effect, especially on Arizona?
I mean, it has a direct effect on the entire West, because it's
Entire grid,
feeds the grid. I mean, let's lower Southern California, I think takes a significant portion of that, but. That and the Bureau is the one that should be interested in protecting our ability to continue to generate power. And they're the ones that right now have these alternatives that we recently talked about, that they're, they are hoping, I think, for a 7-state, that they can put in that may be similar in some ways to some of those alternatives that they showed, and not similar in others. But I haven't read their report enough to tell you. I think you have to look at the modeling assumptions, all the different things that have gone into creating those alternatives to see whether they make, if those are them, that makes more sense than one. Or one of them that maybe the lower basin entities may be okay with versus the upper basin. I'm getting way off track, sorry.
But thanks, I asked the question.
I think your input's really great too.
We're discussing.
Yeah.
Well, sorry, okay. I think,
Hey, Will, I had a question, so, it looks like the draft environmental statement. Comments are due like March 2nd.
Yeah, they're due by March 2nd. They're gonna open up in a couple of days on January 16th.
Yeah, so are you going to try to put something together that for the Yampa White Green coming from the Big River Committee? Or are you thinking we're gonna send in multiple single commenter?
So I was kind of hoping to discuss that, on like what we want to do. I was kind of hoping for some guidance, from maybe from the CWCB, even like what's going to be most effective, you know, like for us to do? Is it gonna be most effective to have individual comments if we wish, or is it gonna be, you know, maybe it's a whole thing, to where we have one as a roundtable and then individual ones? I don't know, but I was kind of hoping that we would get some time to discuss that, the roundtable. And like I said, this kind of came about, just popped up for me in preparation of this, and so I think we gotta do something. We gotta do it pretty soon. So I don't know if we can get some guidance from maybe Amy on what they're telling people. I mean, we thought about having her talk, but you know, at that time, this didn't come up until like January 9th. It probably didn't come on my radar until like last week even. Was it too long ago? 5 days ago? It came out, so. Does that answer your question? We probably need some guidance to make a response.
Well, I'm planning to attend the Water Conservation Board meetings on the 26th, 27th. So, it's pretty easy to get an audience there, so I'd probably pose that question. So I'm sure we're not the only roundtable. It's, water.
I can certainly talk to Amy about the comment that you would want some guidance on. What to comment on. I mean, it's a 1,600-page document. And so, you know, the executive summary and the chapters of it, you know, you can read those, but I think part of the issue in the past has been that you have to kind of look at what were the assumptions that went into creating those, because if they include, you know, there's these two options in that report. If you've looked at it at all, that look like they're maybe okay. I don't remember the name of the two alternatives. They're the
second,
enhanced coordination and coordination. Coordination is supposedly what they can do now without any kind of change in laws. The enhanced coordination would involve more upper basin. And potentially need some additional action from Congress. But in the past, you know, if you get into the modeling, if they're including gap water, which they're calling it now, you know, which is basically just water to put in to make it work. So I can take that message back to Amy and see what kind of guidance that state can provide in terms of how you should be looking at some of this in order to make comments. So I don't think we want to tell you what you should comment, but in helping decipher the 1,600-page document might be not a bad idea.
Yeah, might make it more effective than saying, we don't like you, we don't like this one.
Yeah.
Will the River District, they'll be creating their own comments?
That's a good question, Jeff. I'm not sure, but I can get back to you.
Well, it would be helpful to know if other roundtables are commenting too. Probably it's a state need to be on the same page.
I'll get an answer for you. And Jason, it sounds like he's gonna work on it too.
Yeah, I'll reach out to Amy and the IFWE team and see if I can get some guidance. Typically, we probably don't weigh in on like how you can participate in the public process, but I think the IFWE team would probably like an opportunity to either review or preview comments, just in an effort to, you know, everyone be on the same page in Colorado, you know, present a united front type of thing. But I'll see if I can get some guidance from them here in the next few minutes or so. But I think all of the strategies identified are probably, you know, Director Ullman reaching out is probably a good thing too. I'll see if I can get some info from her.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks, Jeff.
I didn't realize you were on, sorry.
Sorry, I have no comments on this effort, but I really appreciate you all, you know, thinking about not running interference on the IFWE team in those negotiations and thinking about CWCB perspective. It's appreciated for sure.
Yeah, I think we're gonna probably have to be asked to not do it. Cause I think otherwise this group kind of has a history of having an opinion and wanting to share it. So I would think, to answer your question, what we would do is go ahead and maybe schedule some subcommittee work. See if we can't put together some kind of a draft. And that draft would probably include some preferred alternatives and any concerns we have about others. And then try to get it back in front of the group. But yeah, it's a really tight timeline, and we don't have another round of the meeting before the deadline. So
We're not gonna have it, I don't think we're gonna have another roundtable meeting, so it's gonna be something that's gonna have to come in via email for consideration, so.
yeah,
Yeah, but that's kind of my main thing is the comment period's available. I think we need to use it. So it's there for.
we'll blame it on Jeff. He's not here.
Wish he was.
I mean, and part of the difficulty is that this doesn't include, you know, what Amy and Becky are in Salt Lake City right now, trying to negotiate something that isn't even in this report. So, I mean, there could be something put into, you know, as an alternative that is not even right now viewable, so.
Could you clarify on February 14th, does that, if they could come to an agreement, big if, would that then become an alternative considered as part of the EIS process, or how would that be inserted into the process? Because I thought November 11th was the deadline for that.
I mean, this is all, those deadlines and the stated dates are all related to the, you know, the NEPA process that has to occur with. And so there's an amount of public input that they have to get. And so that November 11th was, you know, hey, we'd like to have it kind of, or we at least want to know that you're working towards, you know, there's still possibility of an alternative. And I think that's the message that was sent to Crew, was that they were still talking, still meeting, there's still an opportunity to come to an alternative, and so that's when they set this February 14th deadline. And I've heard some people say, well, is this different than some of the other deadlines? I think that the issue is that eventually you run out of time.
Yeah.
To do, you know, the public process that's necessary. And they can't go much further than February 14th. I mean, if there's a deal by then what I understand the Bureau is saying is that, yes, it would be put in as an alternative, potentially the preferred alternative, because they would prefer it, you know, they would prefer to have a consensus alternative to having to basically say, this is what we are going to do.
Thank you.
Hey, Ken, I mean, just one other point is you guys are considering whether to put in organizational wide, you know, comment in this. Not only is this organization, but organizations that we're all here to represent won't be for that. Like, I don't know how you're gonna get sign off from Garfield County Commissioners.
Right.
Other folks, Route County Commissioners, myself, or in a timely manner. So if we're really considering do this, to your point, Steve, you should get on it quick.
Well, and to your point, one of the main things that they consistently direction that we get from the state is as a roundtable, for the reasons Andy stated and others, they're not always excited about hearing from the roundtable as a whole, but each individual entity that we represent can turn in those comments. And that's probably a more effective time frame to participate in this process, in the EIS comment period.
I think kind of some of the problem is a lot of us, and I'll say it for myself, I'm not educated enough on that. Like Jason said, it's a 1,600-page document. That's why I was kind of hoping for some little bit of help from CWCD or somebody that's actually familiar with it. Because, you know, we want our comments to be effective. We don't want them to be out in left field, like we don't even know what we're talking about. I mean, other than just to say, hey, we don't want to make any cuts, we don't like it, and leave it at that. That's not very effective. So that's where I'm coming from.
Yeah,
This is just-
I'll-
Go
Is
ahead.
that me? Okay. Jeff?
Oh, go ahead. I think I was trying to say something, but someone in the room was also trying to say something. So whoever's in the room, preference to whoever's in the room, I can add my comments later if they're still applicable.
Thanks. So I looked through some of this EIS stuff and by no means, have digested it all, but it's important to understand what all the alternatives being proposed are. But the one thing that stood out to me, and tell me if I'm wrong or more wet about this, is that it seems like having Meade and Powell linked together in a drought scenario is important versus just having Meade as the gauge. Because wasn't that the problem with the interim guidelines, was then Arizona dropping Meade to increase releases from Powell? Yeah. And I know two of the proposals link Meade and Powell, like the volumes in Meade and Powell are a total versus just an elevation in Meade. That would be, that was one of the things that just stuck out to me when I looked through this thing.
I mean, I guess to put a finer point on some of the problems with the 07 guidelines is they weren't based solely on the elevations of Meade, but they were based on both elevations of Meade and Lake Powell, and they included balancing tiers that were intended to balance those elevations if they were within certain ranges. And that resulted in releases from Powell to balance those elevations. And then, reduced levels of Powell. And so, our alternative, the state's alternative that was presented last March was to, have it just related to Powell and not, definitely don't have any of the balancing provisions in there that allow you to kind of game the system or them to game the system.
Gotcha.
Using the words from a certain person in Arizona from a few years ago.
All right, thanks everyone. Yeah, hopefully there's some more time within this meeting to keep discussing this, because this is, as Jeff Myers always says, it's not a issue, it's the issue. So, Rebecca, please.
No worries, I think that's covered that discussion, but great conversation. I only have one other point that I think is important for us all to be aware of. Of course, we know that this is the, different elevations, that powerful elevation is 3490, but the Bureau is really trying to protect 3525. The elevation that they're really trying to protect here. And to that effect, the DROA, the drought, I can never remember the acronym, but the DROA part of the interim guideline is going into effect. That was triggered in July in the 4-month study, and that Powell elevation was projected to drop below the 3525 they're trying to protect. And essentially what that means is that they're changing the first step is that they're changing their releases out of Lake Powell. So this is a really complicated chart, which I had to have explained to me, but basically what it means is that they're going to release less in the winter months from Lake Powell, but then move those releases to the springtime, it's summertime. So they're still, at this point with that DROA operation protected to release the same amount. But they're shifting those releases a little bit. And if this does not work to help maintain those elevations at Powell, the next step will be to release water out of those crisp reservoirs like Flaming Gorge and Blue Mesa, similar, in the manner that happened in 2021. They released water from Blue Mesa at the end of the summertime. So that's the only thing to know, is that potential for crisp releases and changing those releases out of Powell for the time being. And then this is that really kind of dire Lake Powell forecast, which of course that red line is the min probable, blue line is max probable, and green is that kind of middle of the road probable, but that red line of course shows going below some elevation, that 3525 dropping below that within 2026, and then even going below Power Pool in September of 2026. And this is the December one. So obviously it will be updated. It's probably worse numbers. So, that's Rebecca's doing William Corner. I'm sorry. Thanks for joining me.
Misery loves company.
Yeah. Yeah. But that's all I have.
I just heard back from some of the interstate team. It sounds like the discussion is great. Amy and some of the interstate folks will circle back with you all to provide some guidance for you if you do want to provide comment. I reached out to Amy ahead of these meetings, just knowing that this dropped on the 9th and all the roundtables are meeting this month. She, like, for an update and things like that, she was really hesitant to do that just because a lot hinges on some of the basin state meetings that are happening right now as we speak. So she's gonna touch base a little bit later this week and potentially I'll send out some guidance from her.
Thanks, Jeff.
Much appreciated on that.
Yeah, and I guess we were both contacting her, so she's similar message to me, and she said that event, you could reach out to her separately as well. But maybe wait a little bit for that, as Jeff has indicated.
Good to know. Yeah, appreciate you guys getting hold of that one. It's critical timing, I think. Thanks, Rebecca. I got you and Jonathan again to kind of talk a little bit more about the CROA. Is that how you say that?
There, so I will let you do it.
Yeah, thanks. Well, I'm gonna keep it super quick because a lot of it was focused on the cherry report that Rebecca just gave us. So rather than needing to wring a dry sponge, I'll get some like the overarching kind of messages that were going on there. But generally, the overall theme this year was forging a path forward, and so it's all focused on, trying to come to terms with what the reality of our hydrologic situation is, in the Colorado River Basin, and talk about realistic approaches forward. And then, to be honest, there were a lot of good endeavors going on out there, and I think that's kind of what some of the focus was of that meeting. And overarching kind of depressor was what Rebecca just showed. It really stood out to everyone that this is the first time that this failed power production was within a likely probability, even if it is a lower probability. That's always been on the outliers up until this point. So this is the first time that we're really kind of staring in the face that potential that this infrastructure may not be able to function as it was intended to do for a heck of a lot longer than it has. So that was a real overarching message that I took from their time there. Especially in a mid-December trip where not a single person had any weather delays to their flights or travels to get to Vegas was a pretty impressive feat. So, but they talked a lot about solutions, managing water scarcity. A lot of urban areas and metropolitan use is really working on some innovative strategies. Agriculture continues to kind of plow ahead with a lot of pilot projects and different ways to do crop rotations, different types of seeding to find those real water conserving crops that could be planted, and how to build markets for those is sort of a big thing. Agricultural users can shift to their crop types, but don't want what they're growing or is familiar with what they're growing. It ends right there. So it's got to be economically fit as well. New science and innovation, all this data that's been being collected through things like OpenET and the different satellite and remote sensing imagery. They're doing some really fascinating things with that these days. I'd recommend everyone check out climateengine.org, and it's a new a new platform that's integrating all different variables, so precipitation, evapotranspiration, heat index, wind, and you can do trends over time now to basically look at similar things to the OpenET data. If you can look at it over a period of years or seasonally, or just even over a short term, to really start to see like, what's the dynamics in play that we're seeing on a particular field or in a region. And I spent some time with the guys who are developing this, and it was really fascinating to be able to look at both Black Forest considerations or on field as far as how different landscape changes affect water use and how overall ontology is affecting those areas as well. So we looked at some stuff with like wildfires and how that changes the evapotranspiration. Really fascinating stuff. So some good news is that all the science and data collection that's going on is really being put to practice. And a lot of people are making some really unique and innovative tools that just looking at it for about a half hour with those guys, I was pretty excited about what is possible for someone like me who doesn't have a ton of coding experience or anything like that. You can get on there and just play around and really learn a lot about it. So that was an uplifting aspect of the time there. Funding really kind of, uncertain. That was a big message that a lot of both funders and people who were looking to participate in conservation efforts. Just not a heck of a lot. I know NRCS just put out their new regenerative farming, and it was starting to tie some of those climate smart endeavors from the previous administration into the regenerative ag, and it's starting to get some of those funds back out. So there is starting to be a little bit of certainty on funding, but a lot of it is just still not available, and folks were definitely wondering how they were going to make up for that. Else, that tied big into the SCPP and the B2E bucket. It did not seem that the federal government was willing to incentivize the states through additional funding when they weren't coming up with their own alternatives yet. So kind of like how if the kid didn't pick out the garbage, you're not going to give it just so that stuff's seeming to be held back. Not much for on the ground conservation in that way, but that may change as we go forward with legislative action. And I guess the last thing was, the message, and Jason was probably up in the hot seat talking about a lot of this stuff, but also our state representatives, every single one of them hopeful and confident that a solution could be found. It's kind of like a game of ping pong. It's like the balls just bouncing off of each other, and kind of a lot of saying what each state is doing, and each state is doing a lot, to be honest, but in total, it's not meeting the bars. So, everyone has to do more, and no one wants to step forward and take that, voluntary kind of reduction. So a lot of positivity, a lot of confidence that they can get somewhere. But as Jason shared, they're there now working again, and they haven't stopped. And if you see those guys, say thank you. And if you don't see them, say a prayer, because they are looking more now. Their work has been hard and nonstop. And you can see it in their eyes, they're working for all of us. So a lot of gratitude to that work, but they've got a lot more to go, and I hope that they come up with something. I want to keep it short so we can get back on schedule. It was a good meeting. A lot of work being done on all fronts, private and public. Got a long ways to go still.
Thanks, Sean. We appreciate that. Totally do.
Jason, is that got anything to add there? You were really on center a couple of times.
I mean, I wasn't on the agenda thing ready to talk, so, we had lots of conversations with it. I think that's fairly accurate. I think, as you all know, that point, sticking points is, the upper basin was willing to do voluntary and compensated conservation, that's part of the parallel activities that were proposed in the different alternatives, but we don't have any reason, and I don't have any authority to do any kind of mandatory curtailment, mandatory cuts, because we are in compliance with that. And so that's a tough nut to crack when you can't, coming back to water users like you all, saying, you know, we are going to agree to mandatory cuts when the agreement we signed 100 years ago wouldn't put us in that position is a difficult thing to do. And that's essentially what has been pushed by other, so.
Well, that's probably a good segue to your presentation.
Yeah.
So Ken, before we get there, is you and Jonathan you're slated for 30 minutes. It looks like we have 55 minutes worth of stuff to get through in about 40 minutes. Jason, feel free to talk about, you know, what we got now for compact curtailment rulemaking, but please feel free to ad lib and talk to us about what you think we need to know as much as you want to. So yeah, Ken and Jonathan, I guess my ask is, are you guys wanting to fill the full 30 minutes or?
I'm sure we'll need every bit of it. How much time do you need, Jason?
I mean, I don't know that I'm gonna need 25 minutes unless there's a lot.
Why don't we just go with him? We'll take what's left.
Fair enough.
I mean, it will depend on the questions, but I don't.
Jason,
I
you
will
won't
take,
wait
I don't have a
for
25 minutes presentation.
Yeah,
I
that's
don't have any slides because I wanted to just, you know, have the speaking conversation, but. So you want me to go ahead and?
yeah,
start?
yeah.
So I was asked to come, you know, talk to your group, the Big River Committee, and also the roundtable tonight about. And I would say, you know, maybe compact curtailment rulemaking isn't the right title. But at the Water Resources and Ag Review Committee meeting, at the Water Congress meeting in August, I had announced that I was going to start doing what we're calling listening sessions with key groups of entities that represent large swaths of water users, and then, you know, some of the large water users. To essentially, I should start by saying what I already said is, you know, we are not in violation of the compact right now. The delivery at Lee's Ferry is above any measure of, you know, regardless of the arguments between the lower and upper basin, what the measure is, above any measurement that would indicate that we're responsible for doing any kind of mandatory curtailment. Plus, it requires a process that is outlined in the Upper Colorado River Compact that the Upper Colorado River Commission would undergo to make the findings that we are short and that each state has a specific obligation to deliver water to meet our compact obligations to the lower basin. That said, you all are aware, we've had the depressing, I mean, not Rebecca's fault, but the report about snowpack, we've had 25 years where we've had, you know, a few very good years, but a lot of really bad. And it doesn't, you know, appear like that's getting better. We have the warmer temperatures that are resulting in less snowpack, which results in less runoff. And, you know, we are that level, the amount of flow passing Lee Ferry is declining. It is, if they release 7.48 million acre feet out of the reservoirs in 2026 and 27, which was what was proposed previously, I think they may have dropped it to 7.22 for 27 now, based on the newest forecast. That gets us below 82.5 million acre feet passing the Lee Ferry gauge within the next 2 years. And so what I had announced at Water Congress was, you know, I think it's, we've been saying that, you know, we want to do this in a measured way. That because we were in compliance with the compact because of this process that's required to tell us that we have to curtail. The federal government can't just tell me as state engineer, we want you to go reduce your usage by 200,000 acre feet because they don't have the authority to do that. And I would definitely not agree to do that because I don't have the authority to do that. I would be sued by a number of water users if we went out and tried to curtail people through that. So But, I mean, the specter of that is closer than, closer than anybody would have thought 15 years ago when I started working for the state. It was up, there was this feeling that, we'll have some good years and then we'll pop back up, and we're so far above any of those measures that we're not gonna be in that need anytime soon. I don't know that we can continue to say that, and so, but in order for us to determine whether we need to do rules, because I have the authority and my staff have the authority to do curtailment for compact. And we do it in the South Platte, we do it in the Rio Grande, we don't have rules that were promulgated through the state water courts in those basins. For us to do compliance, in the South Platte and the Rio Grande. And so the statute gives me the authority to make and enforce regulations to keep us in compliance with the compact. Supreme Court decisions have indicated that that is, responsibility even that overrides, some of the prior appropriation. We have to meet our compact obligations, and then we maximize our beneficial use within the amount that we're allocated under our compacts. And so, because of the difficulty of administering a call on a river that leaves the state in 8+ locations, different priority and administration number schemes in each of those, divisions. I have just decided to move forward with starting these listening sessions. But we're not starting a rulemaking process per se. We're asking pretty limited number of groups to start out, because if you're gonna do something like this, that's gonna be, we'll just admit, contentious. It's gonna involve lots of input in the end. If we have to go forward with any kind of rulemaking, we want to start off in a measured and, proactive way that makes it a productive and effective process. So we've met with the River District in December with a select group of people with the River District to try to make sure that we could have this, I guess, free-flowing conversation where I want to hear from those folks. What are you, do you think I need rules before I could do curtailment? And I'm not in these meetings going to, argue or disagree. I just want to, I need to get some input from people on what their thoughts are. If you do think so, why not? Why? If you don't think we need rules, why not? If you do think so, what do you think they should look like? What are your concerns? What things do you think we should be considering? And the intent is to do those small group meetings first, get that input and compile it, and then decide kind of how we move forward with the phase 2. And then by the time we do that, those meetings will conclude in March, mid-March. We will hopefully have a pretty good idea whether we have a 7-state solution or an alternative for these guidelines. If there is a 7-state alternative that the states all agree to, one of the main negotiating points for Colorado has been that it needs to include a provision that means basically that the lower basin can't claim a shortage over the period of the operation of these guidelines. That, if it's 20 years, then there's 20 years where we would not be needing to do mandatory curtailment like we do in other basins for compact compliance, because we're doing these other things that may include temporary, voluntary, and compensated conservation programs to go along with other components of that, of whatever alternative they may or may not agree upon. And so that is maybe the extent of what I wanted to share with you, is that it's not a rulemaking process. We have to decide, whether we're going to go forward with them, but it is a start to having these discussions. Measurement rules, which Jacob is very familiar with Division 6, were kind of the first step of, thinking about what would be necessary for us to administer a call from not just, a senior water right on a small tributary, but the call that applies west slope wide. We are completing measurement rules across the west slope. They're already signed and effective in Division 7. Division 4s are filed with the water court and we're working through their protest, few protests in that division. Division 5, we completed the last stakeholder meeting on November 17th. And are looking to file them sometime this spring. We had a significant number of comments in Division 5, which is one of the reasons we did Division 5 last. Because we figured it would be, there's more interests that have the ability to make comments in Division 5. So we're working through those issues with some of those entities, but before we can even think about what would rules look like for curtailment, we need to have consistent measurement across the list slope. So that is the extent of what I wanted to talk about today. So I guess the rest of my time, or we can get on with Ken, it would be questions if you have any for me about how the process is getting played out.
Jason, do you have any intention of utilizing some of the existing work that's been done? The Colorado River District has been doing risk studies. I think the third one was the last one that they did. And it's substantially down that rabbit hole. Is that something that you're contemplating as part of your listening or evaluating resources?
I think if we get to a point where we're starting to put together, more detailed information for a wider public process, because this, smaller kind of, let's gather a bunch of information, gather people's thoughts, see where they, the river district's comments may differ significantly from the Southwest districts or from some of the Front Range entities. We would definitely be looking at the, additional studies that have already been done to investigate risk and how they can be incorporated in any potential, draft documents. Because if we get to a phase 2 where we're probably then coming to roundtables and large groups of water users, we would be talking about concepts probably. Phase 3, if we need to be there, which is highly dependent on what happens in the negotiation process. And then, also whether we end up in court, to be honest. So we would have a phase 3 would be where we would actually have maybe a draft of proposed rules if we feel like that's necessary. So does that, I may have went further than you asked.
No, that's pretty much where it ended up, was some pretty specific recommendations on whose box gets scored.
Yes. And we will definitely be utilizing all information at our fingertips to try to come up with, I guess to be talking with people that some of those conversations haven't really happened, right? The River District did their study. I think Southwest District may have did some studies. The state, at least the division engineers or the state engineer's office, has not went out and asked people to give us comments and data, and so that we could start thinking about this. I'm aware of it. I've actually read the risk study, but we haven't, our position in the past has been, well, this is a ways off. You don't want to do it well in advance, because who knows what the river's gonna look like when we get done with negotiations. So anyway, you've had your hand up for quite some time.
That's all right. No, it's all good information. So going back several steps there, you said you're asking groups whether or not you need rules for compact curtailment.
Sure.
In the absence of rules, what are you gonna do?
So in the absence of rules, which I said in Division 1 and Division 3, in the South Platte of the Rio Grande, we don't have, rules. It is by the prior appropriation system. And so, the South Platte compact is very different than the compact in the Colorado. So is the Rio Grande. Actually, they're all very different. I could do a whole 2-hour presentation on that, but so yes, absent rules, I need, my guidance from statute is that we have to stick pretty closely to prior appropriation doctrine. That is the method by which the state, the legal mechanism the state has outlined for doing that. But even that alone, I mean, I guess, you know. There are some complications there because we, you know, each division, each district, we had district courts at one time adjudicating water rights. We have. Using our administration number have consolidated within each division. You know, if you go in and look at your water right, it will tell you what the administration number is for that. That is a number that was actually came up with in Division 6 actually by Judge Holt, yes. Was originally called the Holt number. So that we could, you know, take a tributary right and a main stem right and evaluate their relative priority. However, it doesn't evaluate relative priorities between a right on the Yampa and a right on the Animas. And so there are some complications of doing it even by strict prior appropriation across 4 divisions.
We do have one online question from Doug Ponder. Committee one, Doug?
Yeah, so Jason, thank you for coming. I guess I appreciate your work you're doing on the measurement thing, and I'm totally supportive of all of that because that makes sense. We can't determine what we can't measure. So I think that's very good. I'm still very worried about the voluntary and compensated, you know, these flow requirements when we can't track it and know where it's going to, and it's available to the user. So I'm worried about that not having the shepherding and whether that all needs to happen in the same time. And then again, I guess, you know, the pool concept in Lake Powell always seemed a great thing to me, that Colorado would have some, if we're going to do that, that somebody would shepherd it all the way down to Powell. That would be our reserve held for our future. And then so it's just not sent for the next user or for somebody to drain out down there for when they re-equal the 2 reservoirs. So anyhow, thank you for coming, and I appreciate it. I'm sorry I'm not there.
Yeah, I appreciate those comments. So, you know, those programs that were first, you know, signed with the 2019 drought contingency plan, the 500,000 acre feet in Lake Powell, they're, you know, the UCRC has been working on provisional accounting projects to work on how we would account for that water. This specific process I came to talk to you about today doesn't have anything to do with the voluntary temporary compensated potential conservation programs, because it is limited to how would I accomplish a curtailment should we actually be out of compact compliance. Because the UCRC has determined that we need to deliver water. They tell me, State Engineer Ullman, you need to deliver a certain amount of water at the state line because we did this findings. We looked at the consumptive use across the upper basin, and here's how much you owe. I mean, there's a lot of unknowns that'll happen between here and there. It's a long ways. But if that should happen, trying to plan for how we're gonna make decisions on how we're gonna accomplish doing that. So it's not about the voluntary programs. Those voluntary programs are, you know, part of the discussions about some of these alternatives.
Follow-up question to what we were discussing earlier. On that relative priority between inside Colorado basins, do you intend to pursue finding out that answer as part of these discussions before you enter a rulemaking or deciding to enter a rulemaking?
We would have looked into that significantly before we move into any kind of.
And when you predict that would start and sort of timeline get for that?
I am not going to be able to give you a timeline for when we would start rulemaking. I mean, I guess for this phase 1, these listening sessions, you know, I intend to finish that first phase of that process in March, mid-March, and take all this information and data and decide, you know, does that mean we go back to those groups and talk to them about the differences between them and then move on with a more broad public process to talk about concepts? I don't know, and so it's hard for me to answer the question, but because any rulemaking process that we would undergo, if we decide we need to do that, is not gonna be short, right? I mean, rules as, you know, those of you that experience the measurement rules in Division 6 and these other divisions, they would go through the same process, they went through the same process that we would have to go through compact rules. And so, you know, we put together, you know, state engineers rules for compact compliance. And they have to file with the water court. Are they filed in every water court, in all four water courts? Are they filed in one and consolidated? I mean, there's a lot of questions there alone. And then, you know, inevitably, I would imagine that there would be, you know, I'm just being realistic. No matter what we put together as a draft, there's gonna be some concerns that probably lead to somebody, you know, taking those rules to trial. In Division 3, our rules for groundwater measurement and irrigation season went to trial in 2015. And they were probably less. Well, I guess if you're in the San Luis Valley, they were less contentious than this, but statewide, they would be less of a concern than this, so. I don't know, so I'm sorry I can't give you
No, it's okay. I
specific
just wanna hear
timeline,
you.
but I can tell you my thought process as to why I can't give you. a timeline.
Also another question, can you share with us the list of very important organizations that you're gonna talk to by March?
So obviously I've already shared that we spoke with the River District, who, you know, represents, you know, this area, the Southwest District. Is the other component of the West Slope. And then in some way, either, you know, in some way, some of the Front Range entities that take a significant amount of water with the Front Range. But that's not the end of this process, obviously, so that's just, you know, understanding that entities like the River District have put together this study, and it's thought about this already. The idea is that these are folks that can give me pretty quick thoughts on how do you think we should do this? And then that next phase would be, you know, roundtables, other, you know, Grand Valley entities, that kind of stuff. That answer your question sufficient.
Yeah, just one request, if you do go back to talk to the River District on this subject, you can all appreciate notice of that, so that if you'd like to listen in. Not participate, but listen to what the River District staff is relaying to you as their concerns or their thoughts on this matter, I think that would be appropriate.
I will take that into consideration, yes.
Thank you.
So can we wrap one more question real quickly, and then Ken and Jonathan need to fit in at least 15 minutes.
I just have one last question then. If you do consider a rulemaking process, we know it can't conflict with the prior appropriations doctrine. So is there, if that's the default, is there one or two rules that or issue that your office has battled with that you would hope a rulemaking process could clarify for you guys?
I mean, I think I already maybe mentioned one, how would we interleave, yeah, safety. Cause you have, you know, in this basin, you have previous adjudication date, appropriation date. That's how our admin numbers calculated. How do you then go consider adjudication date in another division? How those things, so. Okay. Good feedback.
Thank you, you appreciate that, I was really good. That was kind of the first time I heard about how like the rulemaking, or how the measurement rules in Division 6 kind of help big picture wise, that's a good explanation to help me a lot. Okay, Ken and Jonathan, sorry to leave you guys with much time, but they'll do your auctioneer voice and.
Jonathan, you mind if I sort of lead this?
Go ahead, right.
Sally, you could put up that email from Kat that I said. So we did a preliminary run through on this storage discussion in November, and we took some notes. And we're gonna run through that again and see what did we miss. Trying to take what should have been probably 45 minutes to an hour or more, and we're gonna do it in less time. So, bear with me. But realize that what this is, just as an overview, this is the Colorado Water Conservation Board staff saying that they are really interested in hearing what we have to say about approximately 9 different pertinent topics that affect all the water users in the state of Colorado. And what can we agree on? If all 9 basins come back with similar comments on these questions, then that gives us the ability as an IBCC to say, here's what we're in agreement with. From all over the state of Colorado, we agree on these key points, and we're asking you collectively to try to do something about it. And we tried this a year and a half ago. We told them that we thought measuring snow was a really important thing for them to try to identify. It went into the projects bill and we got another $2 million. So we have a good track record. We're 1 for 1 so far. So now we're on to storage. So storage, I'm gonna sit down again. The big questions, and we'll just run through the questions real quick here. What are the biggest challenges of additional storage? What opportunities for storage exist in the Yampa White Green? What are the biggest barriers? Are we currently capitalizing on the opportunities? Can we build resiliency in our water system through storage? And what concerns do you have about expanding or changing that storage infrastructure? So when we go back, you can see the comments now on what are the biggest challenges. There's the perception of why stored water and see the environmental downsides. So just so downstream users can benefit. Funding for the projects and rising costs are a big challenge. Regulations that slow the process and add a lot of cost. And the location and benefit of that for that local area is that what is that? And so what are the biggest, are there any of the challenges that you collectively can acknowledge right now that we should make sure that we include in this list of our biggest challenges for storage? Frank?
Ken, I have a question, just maybe a point of clarification. Is this discussion centered or focused on new storage or enlargement of existing storage?
The latter, and or,
okay.
yeah,
Thank you.
because I think there's probably a lot of opportunities to
Absolutely.
expand existing
That's good
and
to hear.
firm.
Okay.
So we can name some specific projects later when we get down to what opportunities. That's our next question. What challenges, are there any other challenges besides funding, regulations, the location, and just the perception of that there's a segment of our population that just thinks storage is a bad thing and that we need the water in the river. However, that's gonna be a topic that there will be good presentations at the Colorado Water Congress showing that stored water being released is having some really beneficial uses around the state of Colorado.
Hey, Ken,
Yes.
just one quick question. Feel the need to be more specific on the sort of generic regulation term. To include any and all regulations that.
If you have a specific one, let's hear it.
You know, you may just want to expand that to local, state and federal so that
Okay.
there isn't a perception that one regulatory process is sort of tipping the scale against because each project has its own, you know, combination of regulatory concerns.
Good point,
You know, it could be anything from maintaining diligence over years to just trying to get through a federal regulatory system.
Okay, we'll add that to the notes. Any other questions? Any other, are there any other challenges that I forgot to mention here? Hearing none, I'm gonna move on to opportunities for storage that exist. We know we have a number of. We'd like to try to firm Stagecoach a little better. We'd like to, we got a empty Lake Avery. If we were ever gonna talk about doing something, that would probably be an appropriate time to talk about it. There's a number of, there's the Wolf Creek project that's been, that's in the process moving forward. Are we taking advantage of those? Sally, can you blow that up a little bigger so that everybody can see it a little easier?
That's the
please?
same thing,
I don't think I'm the only one that struggles with that. Like, maybe there isn't, we haven't seen a demand for buying water. We always have to have a purpose and need. Before we can get anything approved. And how can that debt, if there's debt incurred, how is it gonna get paid off?
Ken, not to jump around, but when do you kind of need input from us? Like, I mean, when do you have?
Oh, our process will be this is going on right now through January and into February. Many of the roundtables, especially the bigger ones, meet every month. They actually have a very specific committee called IBCC that works on this stuff exclusively. We're still kind of got one foot on the dock, one in the boat, using both the roundtable and the committee, but we may decide to change that. That's a different discussion. But we'll get this feedback from the 9 basins. We have an IBCC meeting in late February, the 20th of February. Before that, there'll be a subcommittee that I'm serving on that will review the 9 different basin input and try to synthesize that. So there'll be some kind of report at the February 20th meeting. My guess is that what we'll end up doing, is that we'll say, this looks pretty good, but let's take this back now that we've taken a 9 basin consensus and run it back to the roundtables. And so in our March meeting, I'll probably be coming back and I'll be talking about both storage collectively in the state, as well as our next topic, which is preserving agriculture. So this is the state saying, you are our grassroots feeder system for input. What's on your mind? We're talking storage, so please speak up and give me something, give Jonathan and I something to share with the group.
So that's when you need it by, I mean.
We're not gonna meet again. This is it.
That's what I'm saying, it's like, this is it. If you have another option for us to kind of weigh in, like via email or poll or something like that.
If you'd like, that's fine, but it would be really nice if we could prioritize some time on our agendas to actually have the discussions face to face.
Sorry.
No, that's not your fault.
No,
You're the one that made the agenda.
You probably should have told me you needed more, and then I could have, maybe we bumped up the meeting.
That's all right.
Ken, let's just say we'll send the email, but let's not waste time talking about it now, but we will send an email with those questions.
We'll send out an email with this document for you to give additional comments, and we'll give you sufficient time. Maybe a couple of weeks to get something back to us so that we have time to take a look at it for Water Congress, and we're gonna see a lot of these people there.
So I don't think 5:30 is a hard stop, Will.
Okay,
I think 5:45 would be a hard stop, so we can so people can run.
Well, we don't have food yet anyways.
Yeah, we don't have food yet.
no,
but
and that's a good point, Steve, and I appreciate that, and Ken, sorry we didn't give you as much time as.
Well, and I don't mean to be snippy, but this is we fought hard to get this voice, and I don't wanna be the ones that didn't take advantage of it. So what are our biggest barriers? You can see the notes here, we have purpose and need. That's important. One of the things that's really changed with the Upper Yapa Water Conservancy District, we weren't really selling much water, very little water in a year. Until we came into an opportunity facilitated by legislation that allowed us to release water for environmental purposes as long as there was a point of delivery. And so we entered into an agreement, a 10-year contract with the Colorado Water Trust. And Andy, close to 6,000 acre feet of water last year.
Yeah, I think to follow up on that, see where you have your second bullet where it says water development timescale is so slow. Specific to our basin, you may want to identify that we are in a time of radical transition of water usage. You know, to your point, 6,000 acre feet of water delivered out of Stagecoach Reservoir. Colorado Water Trust is the single largest user of stored water in the basin. Second only to buying in bulk at Polo or like 1,000 acre. And then some other collective agricultural users. That's a big shift from when the only big player of stored water is coal-fired power plants. That's just happened in the last decade. So for a basin, say storage proponents and agencies that build storage to readjust their operations to a whole new set of water uses and realities in a shipping basin that has a rapidly changing hydrology. That somehow to articulate that, that's the biggest barrier. Is trying to reimagine how we use our existing storage and then consider whether or not we need new storage. So we need new storage, I think oversimplifies the subject.
Good point. So then. So maybe that goes under challenges that we're still thinking about traditional uses of stored water on a metric from decades in the past instead of where we're headed in the future.
Yeah, and think about what's going on right across the street. Those guys would like to close, but then told weren't, so they don't even know what to do with their water in Elkhead Reservoir.
Exactly. And we are releasing water out of Elkhead.
Yeah, so
And
there's
then-
outside, forces at play that, complicate the consideration of when to pull the trigger on building storage or not, or to repurpose storage. And how that works within a basin, and each basin is unique, so. I think some sort of articulation of complexity of how you decide to do that. And that's not a single outside force that's driving those decision-making processes.
Okay, well, we'll make some notes and changes in this, and so when it comes out to you, make sure that the language in there makes sense to you. But I think that's a really good point. Thank you, Ed.
Kelly has her hand up online.
Hi, Kelly.
Hey all, sorry I'm not there, but I don't think you want my crud. So, I guess a couple of things, and I totally understand what Andy's saying as far as, figuring out how to use the water that's in the storage that you've already got. The Yampa has storage. The White does not have storage to be able to figure out what to do with it. So, I would say that doesn't hold true in the White. And I think it's just the permitting. So just based on both of the reservoirs that we're working on in the White River, the permitting, yes, purpose and need, but then the whole permitting process. I don't know how long the Wolf Creek Reservoir has been working on it, but I think we're pushing on 20 years at this point, which is not unusual for a reservoir from what I'm told. But that's crazy. The amount of money it takes to do permitting is absurd. I mean, it's more than what it might cost to actually construct the dam. So that's, I think, one of our biggest challenges. And I'd just like a little bit of clarification from Andy, and I'm not, if he can do it in a quick summary, the Water Trust being the biggest user. Help me understand that.
Stored water from Upper Yampa facilities. So our biggest storage contracts, single users are the Colorado Water Trust and the Yamcola Irrigators Association. And so the Yamcola Irrigators Association out of Yamcola uses 3,000 acre feet annually. There's another 4,000 acre feet of individual, but they're all mixed through the ag community, and they operate in a slightly different manner. But as far as single entities who purchase and release water in the Upper Yampa Basin, Colorado Water Trust as of last year is #1 in total volume.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments?
As far as storage goes, I know Greg Peterson and Colorado have been working on a list of 15 or 16 reservoirs that for at least for the last 5 years have been deemed unsatisfactory or have restrictions on them. I think Andy had a list
Around the state?
Yeah, well, in our Yampa White
Oh,
Creek
no,
Basin.
in our basin.
Yeah, it comes from, so we would have to reach out to Dana Miller from the Dam Safety Division at DWR to get an updated list, and many of those, as you guys all know, are being worked on. It can be anything from some of our grant applicants to a big mess like Sheriff Reservoir. But I think the number, or I guess the total volume of storage that is not being utilized due to dam safety issues probably is not as big a problem as we perceive it to be. So,
It is not a problem.
not compared to overall storage, and that's just looking at big numbers. It can be a big deal to an individual user, because 5 acre feet makes a lot of difference to some people. As opposed to, Sheriff Reservoir having fully reconstructed.
Yes.
So in aggregate, probably not a ton that's underutilized from dam safety, but there are a few here and there that still work.
So that's an opportunity is to rehab, and help these smaller reservoirs get off that dam safety.
Yeah, which we do here at the Yampa White Green Roundtable on a regular basis. Probably are some of our biggest grant.
Yes.
A lot of them are like just single users though, and that's the. Like not multi-benefit, and sometimes we kind of close the door on some of those things because they're not multi-user benefit. But one question I did have for you is, like, I know Yampa River Fund, its funding releases from Stagecoach and Elkhead. What do you think about, is one of the challenges finding a funding source to buy the stormwater? Because I think I heard one time, as far as buying water for augmentation plans, you guys were kind of underwhelmed with the amount of people wanting to buy augmentation water. Is that?
Slowly building.
It's slowly building. That comes down to, and since we have them here in the audience, enforcement. The more widespread the enforcement, the need for augmentation on small users, whether it be wells in very rural areas or ponds. There's greater customers we have come seeking augmentation plans. We do have some new applicants that come through, but it's not the same as other areas, because you remember in Route County, we don't have a widespread phenomena of subdivision development in beyond city limits. So in other counties, that happens much more often. I would say Summit County, probably the closest one where there's, thousands of augmentation needs that happen, pretty widespread, but Route County, maybe Moffett County may change a little bit because the land use regulations are a little different. But unless a water commissioner goes and asks someone to augment a pond or a well, they're not gonna.
So the comment then is that we could create more demand for augmentation water if.
No.
We ask people. I mean, technically that all depends on who calls for their water, right? And so, I mean, we don't determine. When we're doing administration, it's determined by what, a vested water right placing a call for their water.
Yeah, I think the question comes up now is, you folks come in our door and say, hey. I need something for my well. I could name half a dozen of my closest neighbors who don't have augmentation for their wells.
But those wells were obtained before the Yampa was declared as over appropriate, correct?
I don't know, this is just anecdotal, so I would say you might need to do some public outreach if there is a false perception of under enforcement.
No way Division of Water Resources, I don't think in today would issue a well permit without an out plan.
Yeah, that's a new one.
We've got a backlog of them in Moffett County, but we don't have an out plan
Right.
yet.
Yeah.
It can drill without like a permit, so I would say that's probably very few and.
Yeah, we're in a new world where I don't think that can happen anymore.
No, new ones, absolutely, no, it's any existing right around.
But we don't really have the authority to go require people, well, that they obtained prior to their basin being declared as over appropriated, to go tell them, you now have to go to well plan. It's when they go and need a new well permit. I think if they need to amend their well permit to add a use, or if they need to, that kind of stuff, then they're gonna have to get a well plan.
But if they have a well that was grandfathered in before that, we're not doing any enforcement.
So I think, Ken, one of my comments, I thought he clarified very well, but say, for example, you have a rancher that wants to have some storage releases to finish off irrigation during the late season. He probably doesn't want to have to buy that water at the going rate. So I think that there would probably be a need for it, but if he could get, some funding to supplement, like we do the Amber River Fund, we buy releases, I think that, so what I'm trying to say is funding could be a challenge.
Portability of stored water.
Yes, I mean, more people probably use it if they could afford it. That's probably the best way to say it.
Now, the Upper Yampa, actually, the board worked on this for a couple of years. Basically what, Andy kept nudging us closer and closer to a decision, and I'm just gonna round numbers, about $100 an acre foot for just water to, to a municipality or whomever. $50 for environmental water, but $13 for ag water. Trying to address that affordability, who's most able to pay. But that was our decision of our board. There's not, we could just as easily have said everybody pays 100, or everybody pays 50, whatever.
But big picture wise, that might be a one-off, like the rest of the state probably don't have the kind heart that they had to offer it at $13 an acre foot to the rancher. Probably not statewide, it's probably a one-off, but I don't know.
It is.
Yeah, my suggestion, if you're trying to tackle that affordability question, would be you're gonna have to do some direct outreach to ag producers and find out what decisions are they making in dry years. How are they deciding to curtail irrigation, or do they just throw up their hands and say, well, that's it, I have no stored water and this is what I'm getting this year? How are those decisions being made on the inputs to their production? They don't control the natural hydrology, but there's an option for stored water. So what is the basic fundamental decision-making process for ag producers? And then you would maybe take the next step with that, ask about affordability. Because you can make it free and maybe they don't want it anyways. Because there's just not enough time to use it, or, physically there's no way to put it to the use at the right time.
I know these releases from Elk have been really benefiting a lot of ag producers, because what it does is it keeps the call off, the river, and allows everybody to kind of keep using it. So a little bit goes a long ways when you're talking about releasing from a reservoir on the lower rates. So I think that would be my input is look for solutions like they're doing from Elkhead, where you can maximize benefit from storage releases.
One question that we didn't answer the last time is, are we currently capitalizing on our opportunities? Yes or no?
I've been filling that in, Ken, with a lot of what's been discussed seem to be, what can we do better to understand the water use demands and the users as well, but absolutely more than better.
Good. What else do we want to ask, Jonathan? Can we build resiliency?
Yeah, that one we had just kind of superficial responses there, but some examples I know that here in the Ample Green, we've seen augmented late season stream flows, which have been beneficial to environmental, agricultural, municipal, also to conflict resolution between users. So any other examples that you all can think of, how those build that resilience? Could be social, hydrologic, political.
I think of the Maybell Ditch Project as a way to build resilience. Those super massive improvements that have been put all over.
Yeah, and it's hard in that many traditional ag users don't appreciate the state engineer saying you don't have a good head gated measuring device and you need to take care of that. But at the same time, it has some really important purposes, and it's, I think, incumbent upon us
to remind them that even as inconvenient and expensive as it is, there are funds available and it is critical to managing a scarce resource that's only getting more valuable all the time, so.
You know, one of the things on that sort of availability of funds and, we see this over and over in the Yampa Basin is that maybe a grant program that gets rolled out, it's well-meaning and actually well-constructed, but the timing of it is just off for ag producers to be able to take a, you know, opportunity that's presented them. Right now, this, for example, the state measurement device grant, once the deadline is in a couple of weeks, right? You know, think about the reality of trying to take advantage of that opportunity, that sort of timing. And so the timing of it, you know, probably came from other forces that were embedded into the construction of that program. But if it's not timed well for the intended beneficiaries, it's gonna go unused, and that can create a false sense of no interest or, you know, lack of desire to move forward with, you know, improvements to water infrastructure. So there is always that timing, you know. It can be well constructed and well laid out, but if the timing is off, no one's going to.
Other comments on storage? You know, one of the things that I've been arguing is that when we talk storage, we need to also be talking forest health. You know, we know that our biggest reservoir by far is the forest. And we have an old forest that's, you know, not really a very efficient way of producing the water that we need to sustain our drainage. And so there's a really good workshop on the first morning of the Colorado Water Congress on the 28th that's going to talk about where we're at with that process and what lessons learned. I know Christopher will be presenting. We have representatives from all of the major agencies to talk about that challenge. But yeah, you know, obviously the Headwaters Project is really focused on that. We did learn, Jonathan was talking a little bit about technology playing a really increasingly important role. Matt set up a presentation for our board recently that was from GAIA. And they were using artificial intelligence to assist foresters in their inventory of the forest so that we have a much more accurate and easily attainable. Now, I know there's ways of modifying that where you can even do it with a drone. We were talking today about a program that Wyoming has where they have funds available to utilize satellite imagery on areas that they're planning to remove timber to be able to quantify their increased amount of water and soil moisture because they've done important improvements. So that would be one of my comments. I think any storage discussion needs to also acknowledge that any work that we can do to improve the efficiency of our forest storage would be a really good investment, not just for wildfire prevention. Kristen, are you ready for us?
Oh, well, whatever.
Okay.
This happened, we're looking at the clock for sure.
All right. We can call this good since we're gonna follow up with an email and ask for additional comments. Give you a little bit of time to look at it, see what we've missed. But Jonathan and I are both really excited about being able to go down and represent your thoughts and ideas and concerns about storage, and we'll move forward from there.
We'll get these notes cleaned up and then send them out to you all so that you can see what's already on there and the jobs, the new thoughts sent to us. We'll create that little report to take down.
Thanks, that's all we have for right now.
All right, thanks for cramming that in. With that, I'll take a motion to adjourn unless there's any announcements. Motion,
Move to adjourn.
second,
Second.
all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you.
What do you got?
Oh, man, not if I got.
Yeah, I would say that, what you mentioned. Hydrology and.
Anything special is one of
Both sides.
Do something.
Yeah, absolutely.